Welcome to the podcast known as Blending the Family. I am your host, Tommy Maloney. How are you doing? You doing good? I'm doing well. I'm here in Birmingham, Alabama, where it's been cold. It's been raining. It's been cold. And it's been raining. Anyway, how are you doing? You doing good? I worry about you. You know I worry. You know what? Let's just start off with a group hug. Okay? Let's just hug it out because I'm concerned that I haven't heard from you in a while, and that you're doing well, but you just won't let me know. So I'm letting you know that's okay to let me know that you're doing well. All right, moving on. Okay, all right. Hey. You're doing well. We talked about that. The new book, My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m., is available for pre-sale at www.mydadsadvicebook.com. mydadsadvicebook.com. You got to put the W's in front of that. And book sales are doing well. And I'm happy. I'm extremely happy, because we will be having... I think the book party is going to be a place in Colorado that I really want to do a book signing party at. And stay tuned for that. Okay? Is this your first time? Oh, I apologize. I forgot. How rude of me. If this is your first time coming by the podcast, I am your host, Tommy Maloney. That's me, the guy behind the mic. What is blending the family? Happy you asked. There are times we're going to talk about co-parenting. There are going to be times where we talk about co-parenting apps. And on this episode, it is another episode where the tables are turned. Susan Guthrie, Esquire, who also has a podcast. You find her on Instagram at Divorce and Beyond. And then you can find her on LinkedIn. She's the founder and principal at Learn to Mediate Online. Every time I see her she puts out great stuff. She's also good friends. You'll hear this on the podcast. She's also really good friends with Gabriel Hartley. They're like BFFs. But every time I see something that Susan puts out on LinkedIn, I know it says mediate. For some reason, I correlate that word to meditate. I don't know why. But back in November of 2020, I was on Susan's podcast, and I had such a blast. I did ask her, hey, please send me the audio because I would love to help promote you as well. She was just so much fun. She is fun. She's a great person. And like I was saying, I want to share this opportunity of her talking with me, with you. Again, you got to come around more often. I miss you. You're doing good. All right, just want to make sure. All right, I am somewhat tired, but that's okay. That's not your issue, not your concern. But before we go, there will be a question of the podcast at the end, but also book review. Okay, so if you're first time listening to this podcast, I decided in 2021, because I love to read, I love to share books with people, and I love hearing book ideas from other people. This is going to be a little different. So years ago, I purchased a program called Living Your Best Year Ever. It's by Darren Hardy. And Darren Hardy used to be the publisher of Success Magazine. He does his own stuff now. Highly recommend. He's on The Social. Darren Hardy, Hardy. Again, Living Your Best Year Ever. You can get the CDs and the journal. And this is what I want to talk to you about. So part of the program is a journal, and each week you write down your goals, and then you keep track each week of your wins, your losses, your aha moments, things you need to fix. What professional development or personal development are you reading or working on? It also talks about, what are your top 3 goals for the year? What are your top 3 goals for the week? Top 3 goals each day. And so I wanted to share this with you because I love this program and I love using this journal each and every week. So, for example, one of my goals is health. And the last time you and I spoke, I talked about the health goals, and I actually achieved week 1 goal of dropping down 2 pounds. And part of my routine is to say to myself, stop making excuses. So part of my routine in the morning now is I will do 50 push-ups, not in a row. I need to mention that, not in a row. I break it down to 2 25s because that's once I hit 25 right now, that's when my arms and shoulders are giving out. But the other thing is once I come back from the day job, I go right to the gym. And the good thing is the hotel I'm staying at, you have to make a reservation and only one person can be in the gym. And I love it. Because I'm one of those self-conscious people. I know I'm fat and I don't want to be in a gym when other people are in there and they're all in great shape and they are on the treadmill, doing like 100 miles a minute, and I'm struggling at an incline of 2 at 3.5 miles an hour, and have breathing issues, and I sound like I'm asthmatic, but I'm not really, as far as I know. Anywho, so I keep track of the goals during the week, and it's called the weekly rhythm register. So the goals for the week has a column: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I just check off what I've done. And it's perfect because for the push-ups, I've been doing them every day. Coming back to the hotel, I change into my workout gear, and then I go hit the treadmill for an hour and get, my goal. And you're probably going to laugh at this, going, "Oh, you suck." But I get about 3 miles in on the treadmill. I'm pretty proud of that. And I just want to share this with you because I think this is something that you could use, and I firmly believe in this product. So there you go. Living your best year ever. You can get it on Amazon, and I bought the journals, just the journals, each year to help keep me. And this year I'm really, really serious and focused, and I'm so pretty proud of myself that I've maintained my goals so far. As a matter of fact, tomorrow morning I've reserved the gym for 5:30 in the morning so I can get a workout before flying back home to Colorado and seeing Otis and my wife. And I think, no, not this weekend, not seeing the boy this weekend, but I'm going to see my grandmother, and I'm excited about that. Stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for that. I think there's going to be some fun involved. All right. As I said, I was on Susan Guthrie's podcast, and I can't say enough about Susan and how much I really cherished the time I was on her podcast. So there you go. As Terry Crews would say, your success is my success. Please don't forget the book My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m. is at pre-launch right now, pre-sale. Head over to www.mydadsadvicebook.com. Have a beautiful day. Stay warm. Be kind to one another. Please. Please. I'm begging.
Hello and welcome to today's podcast. I'm Susan Guthrie, your host, and today we're going to be covering the topic of positive fatherhood. And I love that phrase. We talk about positivity in so many ways, but my guest today has coined this phrase and talks about fatherhood, parenthood, and in all its different permutations. And he's experienced many of those permutations. So he is the perfect person to be talking about this. My guest today is Tommy Maloney. You may know him from his really popular podcast, Blending the Family, which you can find on all the major podcast outlets. He's spoken at TEDx. I actually just watched that TEDx a moment ago. It's fantastic. Go watch it. If you're watching the video, you can see Blending the Family logo, which is a beautiful rainbow heart. He's also written several books. And we'll be delving into some tips from those books today. The first one was 25 Tips for Divorced Dads. Then there's Why Not You, Why Not Me? And his new book, which is My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m. He just told me is going to be out hopefully before Christmas. So that's an ambitious project. I know, I see the crossed fingers. I'll keep mine crossed for you too. But Tommy, thanks so much for joining us here today.
I'm so honored to be on your show, Susan. I know we have friends in the same circle, and when they got me in touch with you, I'm just like, I feel like a little girl. I'm so happy and
we met through Gabrielle Hartley, actually.
Gabby, yes.
Yeah, the effervescent Gabrielle Hartley, who's one of my best friends. And when Gabrielle Hartley tells you, you've got to talk to Tommy, I knew I had to talk to Tommy. And, this topic, I was just telling you how happy I am that we're going to be able to talk about this topic, because recently I've been doing a series of episodes focusing on sort of I just did the one, A Toxic Masculinity, with Dr. Elizabeth Cohen, the divorce doctor. I also have an episode coming out with Daniel Harold, who is another divorced dad who has started a group called Divorced Over 40, which is there to provide support for both men and women. But, there's a lack of support for men. This is something I think you noticed in your own life, and maybe that's why you're so passionate about, about your project.
Yeah, I was divorced 2008, December 23rd to be specific. And here in the state of Colorado, within 90 days, you're divorced. Papers filed, you're done.
Wow.
Yes. And the story of that was on a Sunday night. My former spouse asked for a divorce. The next day, I was leaving for a business trip. She already knew the address of where I was at. By that Wednesday, I had my divorce papers. It was just mind-blowing, Susan, that how quickly it all happened. And as a parent, you really take your time with your kids for granted. And all of a sudden, here I am, a divorced dad. I literally had no place to live. Luckily, as a road warrior, I have many hotel points. So that's where I would stay on the weekends. I had my son, Connor. So for his first couple years, he grew up in either a Marriott or a Residence Inn or a Hilton, whatever we needed. But he had one stipulation, which I always loved, Susan, was he said that any hotel we stay at always had to have a pool.
I knew it was going to be the pool. I knew it was going to be the pool. Oh!
He couldn't swim, which was so funny. But it was a opportunity for me to work with him on how to learn how to swim. And so because of what I went through, I tried to figure out, okay, how do I stay connected with my son when I'm not in the same house, but from time to time, not even in the States. So that's where the first book, 25 Tips for Divorced Dads, came about. Was I would go from Denver airport to LaGuardia on a Sunday, and the first place I would go, Susan, was to the bookstore and get 5 postcards. And so throughout the week, I'll be writing postcards and sending them back to him. And he's 17 now. He still has those postcards, which I
really
love.
Yeah, I mean, I love that, the book, the 25 tips. I was looking through it, and I mentioned to you, when I was when I was handling litigation cases for divorce, the majority of my clients were actually men. For some reason, men just chose to hire me. I had female clients, of course, but and the one thing that I kind of noticed for my dads that I was representing is that they were a little lost at the time that they had to start parenting solo, I'll call it. That and I, you know, most of them said, well, it's always been something that was managed by my wife or by the kid's mom, by my co-parent, you know, that our time as a family was something, well, mom said, oh, we're going to go pick pumpkins today. And that's what we did as a family, or we're going to go to the game, or we're going to go and do something. They said, but now all of a sudden I'm in my new apartment or my new house or my new hotel room like you, and I'm one-on-one with my child or my children. And it was a new experience for a lot of dads. And so your 25 tips, the subtitle to the book is How to Create Special Memories and Grow Bonds with Your Children. And that's what really reached out to me, because I thought, what a fabulous resource for dads who might be feeling that way.
It was hard. My former wife is, an A personality, and I'm as laid back as they come. And so it was an eye opener of, oh my gosh, what I'm now a dad part two, really. And how can I spend quality time with Connor and also, give him a positive life. Again, when we first were staying at hotels until I got my townhome. And so it really was, again, an eye opener of going, all right, what can we do together? What can we, it's the quality time, not quantity. It's really spending that time together. And so we would find things, prior to that, before the divorce, I was, for almost 2 years, I was a stay-at-home dad, and I loved it. He and I went everywhere. I mean, talk about a wingman. We would go to the mall. We would be those, typical, you see the moms in their strollers with their coffee, just walking around the mall. We were that too. And we'd walk around and he would just be looking up at the lights, and it was just great bonding moments. And I really believe, Susan, if I didn't have that time with him, if I really wasn't a stay-at-home dad, I firmly believe our relationship would have been one of those where you hear horrible stories about your kids. And so I'm very blessed that my former wife gave me the opportunity to be a stay-at-home dad. And so luckily for me, even though I was trying to figure it all out after the divorce, I had a little bit of that experience, again, being a stay-at-home dad, where we could do things. We could definitely get out of the hotel, go to the pool, but then get out of the hotel and go play mini golf or go see a movie, just spending time together, because it was, I narrowed it down, or it was less than 48 hours I would have with him on a weekend. And so utilizing as much time without overdoing it was my goal every time I had him.
That's such an interesting thing for me to hear, because I want to talk about being the stay-at-home dad as well. But I also, one of the things that I've often heard from listeners, from female clients, from moms, is that, well, through the marriage, I was always the parent who did the homework with the kids. I was always the parent who went to the school events. I was always the parent who organized the play dates, bought the birthday presents for their friends, and coordinated all of those things. And so there's an expectation, I think, for a lot of mothers that at the time of the divorce, it's like, well, I've always been that person. He doesn't know how to do it. I've heard that. Or he doesn't, I do it. I should continue doing it. And I've literally heard judges say to that remark, he can learn. And, you were kind of, I think, maybe in that situation, but I think what's missing in the he can learn is, and he wants to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you very much stepped up and wanted to be the dad, the parent, a stay-at-home dad at the time.
I went through watching my parents divorce. I mean, I literally watched my dad the day he left, and that's one memory that's always going to be tattooed on my brain. And I love my dad to death. I mean, we get along so well, but because of that experience, because of seeing firsthand, I didn't want my son, number one, to see me leave. I didn't want him to go through that trauma. And so my goal, Susan, was to make sure that I could learn things. I mean, I had to learn how to cook at a very early age. My mom worked two jobs, or she was going to night school, so I had to learn. I mean, sure, I made TV dinners. I mean, that was easy, throw them in the oven and all that stuff. But there are other things I learned how to make, like meatloaf. I think I could make a pretty darn good meatloaf. And so cooking, luckily for me, was something I enjoyed doing. But at the same time, and I think I put that in the book, was having your kids right next to you learning how to cook. I mean, teaching them life skills going forward. And so, yeah, just like you were saying about judges, for me, and I don't want to speak for all the men, but for me, yeah, I wanted to learn. I wanted to, you know, be a better dad than my dad was. And as parents, that's what we want. We want our kids to do better than us, economically, socially, all that good stuff. And I already had some of the tools, but it was having to learn, new skills to be a good dad, to, just be supportive. And again, not being in the household with him was probably the hardest thing ever. Again, going from being a stay-at-home dad where I was with him constantly, and I did work a night job, so it balanced really well for our household. So I was with him a lot. But when I got divorced, that was hard. That was just, again, because of going through that, how could I help other dads? How can I, say to other men out there that, okay, you're not in the same household, but what can you do on a daily basis to stay connected with your kids? And again, that's where the book idea came from, was just to share with other dads to that it's okay, but you have to be consistently involved with your kids. You have to.
And you have to forge some new paths and you have to learn some new things. I'm wondering, one thing that I know is a phrase that I've heard often throughout my practice is the Disney dad syndrome.
Yeah.
Where dads, feel that they have to go to extreme lengths to amuse or make their children happy when they're with them because they feel that their time's been limited. And do you have tips around that? Because I know in the moment it feels really good, but maybe it's not always the best for the children.
I'll never forget when I first moved to Colorado, I was living with my cousin. And my cousin was the epitome of a Disneyland dad. So as soon as he picked his daughter up, we would head right to Toys R Us. The days when we had Toys R Us.
Yes.
And he would look at his daughter, whatever you need, whatever you want, go get it. And I was like, you're not doing your daughter justice, because it boils down to our kids just want to spend time with us. And events. You can buy them toys, but come on, those toys are going to be broken within a few hours or a week. You want to create memories. And some of the memories I've been very fortunate is because my son plays hockey, and my former spouse understood that hockey that was our thing. That was, that's how we bonded, because I used to play. I coached him. I spent a lot of, I kid because I wrote a blog post years ago called I Cheated and Got Caught. And what happened was I would beg these head coaches and say, hey, can I be an assistant coach? Because all I want to do is spend more time with my son. And they're like, yeah, sure. Come on. So one year we're getting ready for tryouts, and the director said, oh, by the way, Tommy, we need another head coach. You're going to be it. I'm like, no, 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 no. I just want to spend time with my son. I don't want to have to now think about stuff like that. And so that's what happened. I got caught. But it's about events. And so I've been very fortunate to, for a couple of years, he played travel hockey. So he and I would be the ones on the planes, staying in hotels together, having meals together, and just bonding. And again, that's what our kids really want. They want to spend time with you. They don't need another Xbox. They don't need another whatever the next widget is. They want time with you. And so again, that's what I was saying earlier. I felt so guilty that I took, well, it's a lot of it because I'm a recovering Catholic. So a lot of Catholic guilt right there. The not having, the time anymore. And so that's what our kids want. Bottom line, Susan, they just want to spend time with us. There's going to be times, with our teenagers, eventually they're going to say, I'm done with you. Okay. As long as you can build up positive fatherhood up until that point, you've done a good job.
Right. Well, and there's that positive fatherhood. You called it, you told a wonderful story in your TEDx about what your dad said to you when you called to tell him he was a grandfather. And then you brought George Costanza into it. So maybe you could tell that story, just because I enjoyed the whole thing.
I always remember the George Costanza where he did the opposite. And that Seinfeld episode where he did everything the opposite and the whole world was working for him. And with my dad has a very dry sense of humor. But when it comes down to advice, I will call him, I will ask him. And so the day Connor was born, you have to, you got to call the moms, the grandmothers and say, hey, you're a grandmother. Great. Hang up, call the next one, And so with my dad, he already had laid down the law and said, I don't want to be called grandfather. I don't want to be called papa. I want to be, and again, he has changed. He's an awesome, awesome grandfather, not only to my son Connor, but to my wife's two daughters, are my bonus daughters. He treats them just like blood. And I owe a lot to him. Because of him, I learned how to be a chaperone. Anytime my son's school, when he was in grade school, needed chaperones, I learned from my dad because that's what my dad would do. But when I called my dad to let him know that he's a grandfather, and I told him that, he said, well, let me tell you, son, do you know what your role is now as a father? And I'm like, I don't know. This is like a trick question, Susan. I don't know.
Well, and you're only like 10 minutes into fatherhood too.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
Pop quiz.
Pop quiz. Exactly. Oh, I didn't study. And I said to him, I go, well, just to love him and care for him and whatever, or as they say in Seinfeld, yada, yada, yada. He's like, no, your job as a parent to screw up your kid as best you can. And I'm like, okay, Dad, I gotta go. So that's where the Costanza thing comes in, is because I want to do everything opposite. And so the new book, my dad's advice at 5:04 a.m., the little subtitle is How to Screw Up Your Kids as Best You Can, but in a positive way. So I reverse engineered everything. Like I said, field trips, I was always the first one to sign up. And sometimes I'd be the only dad, which was fine. Spending time with my son, doing things that I could with him. That's all I wanted to do. Again, the Catholic guilt of, not in the marriage, not spending enough time, or, it's, the Cats in the Cradle song pops in my head on a daily basis right now, because he's going to be off to college next year. And it's like, man, I need to spend some more time with him. And so, it goes back to your earlier question. As kids, they just want to spend time with their parents. That's the bottom line. I mean, you can get them all the greatest gifts you want. I mean, it's the memories. That's what's going to come down to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that is what they remember. And they remember the little moments much more than they remember the big moments. And I know that just from speaking to my stepchildren about, I've now been with them for coming up on 16 years or so. So we've gone and done big, exciting things as a blended family, but we've also, it's the little dinners and the projects we do together or things like that, that really seem to have the most impact. One of the things I don't want to lose sight of to ask you about, because I get very curious and I'd love to hear about your experience. You mentioned that you were, for a time period, a stay-at-home dad. And as I mentioned, we've done the episode on toxic masculinity. I also had an episode with Susan Eckstein, who was a non-custodial mother. So her ex became the custodial parent of the children, and she received a fairly poor reception from the rest of the world to her non-custodial status as a mother. In the reverse of that, how did you feel, and how did you feel accepted or supported by society at large as a stay-at-home dad?
I have to laugh because I actually was able to feel what stay-at-home moms went through, especially going back to the workforce when you have, a gap in your resume and they're like, well, where have you been the past year and a half, 2 years? And I'm like, I was a stay-at-home dad. I worked, a part-time job at night to, help support. And you would get those questions of, but you're a man. Why are you doing that? Why isn't your wife doing that? I'm like, well, number one, she made way more money than I did. So that's number one. And number two, I wanted to stay home. I wanted to, be the caregiver. And I know, and I'm going to probably get myself in trouble saying this, Susan, but I know as men, we get a bad rap that we're not nurturers by nature, but we truly are. And, when you look at the statistics of stay-at-home dads, I mean, they've gone up year after year after year. And that's because we do want to be the caregiver. We do want to be, home with them. And, for your example about the non-custodial mom, it is hard because you have society that looks at what is normal. I look at where our world is right now, and everybody talks about the new normal. And I just want to slap somebody if they say, well, the new normal. Well, there's really no such thing as normal. I mean, I remember years ago, I was writing a piece and somebody had asked me, well, do you think blended families are the new normal? And I'm like, well, if you look back at the Brady Bunch, I mean, that was not normal. I mean, that was science fiction back then.
Yeah.
Having these two families under one roof. And so what I think that the best way to describe it, Susan, is what is best for your family. So for that example you're talking about, well, what was best for that family? Maybe it was best for the children to be closer to a certain school. Maybe it was just a better way of raising their kids. And that's what, that's the thing that drives me nuts about co-parenting. To some, co-parenting is who's a better parent. That's not what it's about. Co-parenting is about the kids. You should always put the kids first. And, one of the things that my wife, Ann, and I, when we first started dating, we said, if our kids didn't get along, we weren't going to continue dating because that's not fair to the kids. And so you have to look at what is the best situation for your family. So again, what is a normal situation for your family to make it work best for the kids?
Yeah. Well, and that's in Susan's case, in that episode, it was very much a decision that she made with her ex-husband about what was going to work best for the children, who have done beautifully. In fact, she mentioned in the episode, this was one of the things that really stuck out for me, obviously, since I'm mentioning it, but her kids had been seeing a therapist for another reason, or had been, going to therapy through the time of the divorce because the parents wanted to make sure the kids were processing well and had someone to talk to. And the therapist said to the parents after the divorce and beyond that, your kids have the usual stressors in life and things like that. But I think it's a testament to you two as parents. They've never shown stress or anxiety around the divorce in the therapeutic setting, which I've never heard from any therapist in 30 years of being, a divorce attorney and mediator. And that's truly the putting the children first and making those decisions. But society, unfortunately, is not particularly supportive of people stepping outside of the traditional roles. And it's unfortunate. And then it really can come into play. Now, you've also mentioned a blended family. In fact, Blending the Family is the name of the show, your podcast and your blog, and you have wonderful resources out there on that topic as well. So I do want to touch on blending families. I happen to be a part of a blended family myself. I married into step triplets, and my husband, I didn't have children of my own. I love one thing I thought of though, when you mentioned the Brady Bunch, did you ever notice that you never saw co-parents in the Brady Bunch? I don't know if they were both widowed and widower, but there were never co-parents, and the kids were never going off to the other parent's house or anything like that.
So I actually did, as best I could, some backstory research on it, because years ago I did a talk, and it was about how to create a blended family. And so the story is, he was a widower, she was divorced. And you're right, you never saw the girls ever go.
Ever.
So yeah, so it was like,
their dad just disappeared. Poof.
Exactly. So
yeah.
Apparently, unfortunately, dad might have been a deadbeat dad. I don't know.
There's a headline for the Brady Bunch. Brady Bunch dad, deadbeat dad. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're a stepdad or a bonus dad. Let me use your phrasing, which I love. We use bonus in my family as well. And you have 2 stepdaughters or bonus daughters?
Yeah.
And
one is, oh my God, I just have to say, I am so blessed because both girls are super smart. They are, I really have never had an issue with either of them. And the oldest, Betsy, is in grad school. She is following her dad's footsteps and becoming a physician's assistant. Her sister, Becca, is a freshman here in Colorado at college, Northern Colorado College.
CU
something.
Boulder?
No, University of Northern Colorado.
Okay.
So yeah. Matter of fact, I used to write for an online magazine, and I'm drawing a blank, but I never really had Betsy, the older one. She doesn't like serious conversations. And so I knew that. And so one of the things I did was I wrote like an op-ed piece specifically for her that I wanted to share with other dads that have bonus daughters, that there are going to be those times where it's not easy saying the I love you. It's more of a mutual respect, a mutual relationship. And matter of fact, when she was going to college in Fort Collins, I was going to Toastmasters. And so a couple of times I would say, hey, if you have free time, let's go grab a cup of coffee before my Toastmaster meeting. And so, our relationship is just, it's more, I hate to say it this way, but it's more like a business relationship. With her sister, Becca and I. Becca is just, she's a goofball. And her and my son, if Connor didn't have brown eyes, the two of them could be twins. They really could. And, a quick story about the two of them is because Becca is, a year plus in age. They get along so well because they're so close to each other.
Yeah.
But when they were 8 and 9, I think, they came to me and said, we want to write a book. And I said, awesome. What do you want to do? And they said, we want to come up with tips of our own to help other kids going through divorce. And I'm just like, oh my God, Susan, talk about two young kids with a giving heart. I'm like, all right, what do you want to do? And they said, well, we want to write 5 tips. And so here's where the negotiator in me came in. I said, well, how about 15? And they said, how about 10? I go, deal.
Bold.
So they wrote a coloring book called 10 Tips on How to Survive Your Parents' Divorce. And so I look at going back to my wife and I saying, if the kids didn't get along, you can't create a household because it's not fair to them. You don't want to have that excess baggage. You don't need constant fighting within the household. And so, like I said, I'm very blessed that all 3 of them get along just like blood, brother and sister. I was just telling the story this past weekend where when we did a family / honeymoon when we got married, and we went to San Diego. And afterward, my wife said, what was the best part for you? And I said, there was one day we were just sitting at the pool and they were just having a good time. And I said, that's what I loved. And I said, what about you? She said, the times they were arguing, because that truly meant that they accepted each other. And I'm like, that's awesome. And it's true that they were so comfortable enough to yell at each other. And I'm just like, okay, I get it. I understand it.
Yeah, because siblings don't get along every single day, every single moment of every single day. So it is a true sign that they can argue, but also then get back to being close, to being friends. So I love that your overriding concept was the emotional content for the children in blending the family, because that is, again, children don't ask for our divorces. They don't ask for our remarriages. They don't, this is all happening to them. So putting them at the forefront is the best possible way to end up with a blended family that works well for everyone.
Well, it cracks me up because with social media, that like Becca and Connor are on the same social media platforms, and they'll talk to each other through that way. And I love it because, again, it just shows that they were able to, first be strangers and then become, there are times where we don't even use the word bonus. We just say brother and sister or annoying brother
Family
to them. Yeah.
Well, I love the resources you've created for people. I especially the coloring book. Where can people get? So you have your 2 books and the coloring book, and then the new book that will be coming out. Where will people be able to get that?
Website, blendingthefamily.com, blendingthefamily.com. You didn't know I was going to break out in the song.
Yeah. Well, I will, of course, have blendingthefamily.com in the show notes, but can they reach you as well through blendingthefamily.com?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Yep. And the podcast is
Blending the Family.
And where can you find that?
On the website, blendingthefamily.com, iTunes, not iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play.
Oh, all the majors.
All the majors. I
out there.
iHeart Radio. Yeah.
Those are all the majors. So, well, Thank you so much, Tommy, for coming on today. I'm so happy that we got to talk about positive fatherhood. And I hope that this helps the dads out there. Of course, that was just, we can only skim such a large and important topic, but I encourage everyone to go out and get the books, read some of your blogs on blending the family on the website. They're wonderful.
Thank you, Susan. I am so honored to have the time to speak with you. And I know we've been trying to do this for a while, and, here we are, and our time's up.
Bummer, but it's perfect because it's just before your book's coming out. Hopefully by the time this episode airs, it'll be just shortly before, so people will be able to get it. Tommy, really, thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Don't forget to pick up the pre-sale book, www.mydadsadvicebook.com. Hey, what's the best yoga pose?